tidings, ladies and gentlemen of the lodge, and welcome back. Today we are talking about none other than the highly anticipated RPG of 2023, Final Fantasy XVI. Specifically in this video, I'm going to be going through the main cast and speculating on the likelihood of each cast member meeting their end in Final Fantasy XVI. Now again, there's not a whole lot we know about this game or its story yet, so I wouldn't put too much stock into these predictions, but it'll be fun to come back and see how accurate or inaccurate these ended up being. Seeing as the devs, and most notably Yoshi P, have mentioned that this is a story that's going to be tackling more mature themes than we are used to in the Final Fantasy series, you have to believe that that is going to be accompanied by some death within the main cast. So again, these are just my predictions. Feel free to share your predictions in the comments, and without further ado, let's get rolling through the cast of Final Fantasy XVI. Starting us off with our man and main character Clive here. Clive, being the main character, already makes it pretty likely that he's going to survive into the end of this, because at the end of the day, if they kill off Clive, how are they going to sell us any DLC? But anyway, all jokes aside, I anticipate that the likelihood that Clive survives this adventure is pretty likely. Although I will say, a lot of characters who walk the path of revenge, usually their story doesn't end well, but as we learned from that PAX East presentation, that course and thirst for revenge is something that Clive is either going to grow out of or let go by the end of the adventure. But anyway, with that aside, I anticipate that Clive Rossfield will more than likely survive this journey. Now let's move on to Joshua, where this one's a layup. They've already told us that he's gonna die, but the question is whether or not he's reborn. I think there's a chance we see some kind of rebirth or resurrection for Joshua, but not anything I would place my bets on. Anyway, we already know Joshua's gonna meet his end, so no need to spend too much time on this one. Moving on to Jill Warwick. Now, Jill is another one who I think more than likely he's gonna make it to the end of this journey. I don't think she's going to die in Final Fantasy XVI. Again, that's something that I could be wrong about, but again, with her being part of the main cast, and with both her and Clive already losing Joshua, I can't imagine that the two of them will meet their end as well. So again, Clive and Jill, I think more than likely are going to survive this journey, so I think we can feel pretty safe about that. And again, knowing that Jill has already had to deal with so much tragedy, not just in losing Joshua, but being separated from her parents, I'm willing to bet that her story will not end with her death. So I'm going to mark Jill as more than likely safe from death on this journey. Now that's going to take us over to Benedicta, and this is where things start to get a little bit more flexible when it comes to the fates of this cast. Benedicta certainly is more cold-hearted and ruthless than the previous named cast, and usually when a character has a demeanor as that, it makes them a little bit more likely to pay for their sins. And again, we see on the website that it's mentioned that she is forced to face her past, so there is a chance that the sins of her past end up catching up with her. Now, do I think it's likely she will die? Not necessarily, but I definitely think her chances of meeting her end are much more likely than that of Clive or Jill. So when it comes to Benedicta, I don't think there's too much to be worried about, but certainly she should be looking over her shoulder because her past will catch up with her eventually. And now we move on to the big man Hugo, and this is a guy where, look, I could be wrong, but I think Hugo's gonna die, and obviously we don't know a whole lot yet about the character, but from the little bit that we do know, taking a quick look at his profile here, it says Benedicta Harmon will teach him money and power are far from all the world has to offer. And of course, we've seen a little glimpse of that in the trailers. But honestly, I think a character like Hugo, who seemingly have this thirst for money and power, I think a great way you can show a character like that has grown is making some sort of self-sacrifice. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Hugo make a sacrifice that ends up in his death in order to save a character like Benedicta. And again, I don't know, it's just the vibe I'm getting from Hugo. Again, as they say, he is a man who has everything and wants for nothing. I just can't shake the part of me that thinks this character's story is going to end in some kind of self-sacrifice that shows at the end that he valued something more than that money and power. But again, I could be wrong about that. It's just a feeling. I think if you're a fan of big boy Hugo here, I think there's a little something to be worried about when it comes to meeting his end. Now let's move on to Dion, or Dion, not sure how it's said yet. Dion, to me, based on his profile and his vibe, give off the aura of being the people's champion. Characters like that usually are willing to go the extra mile and give a hero sacrifice a noble sacrifice. And again, if we look at the last sentence of his profile here, there is an eerie implication. So as we know, his icon is Bahamut, and again, look at this last sentence. All is not well in the Empire, and the gathering shadows may yet be enough to quell Bahamut's light. So again, there's not enough here to say for certain, but again, the future looks a little bleak for Dion, especially when we factor in that final sentence. A few more left here. Let's move on to Barnabas. Not too sure what to make of him. He does have the profile of a very fierce warrior, so I imagine that he's going to be very strong and safe in battle. So again, I think his likelihood of survival is better than some others. I'm going to say that Barnabas has a pretty good chance of surviving this one, especially when we consider that part of his profile is being very competent in battle. And then we move on to Torgle. Now, this is the one character nobody wants to see die, and I'm on the fence about this one. I don't think it's likely he dies or it's likely he survives. I think it could really go either way. My reasons for feeling that way is one, he's more wolf than dog, so he does have a longer lifespan than the average dog. But as we know, this is a game that takes place over decades. It starts with Clive in his teens. It's going to end with Clive in his 30s. So we're going to have a Torgle that's in his 20s. And, we know what age can do to a pup. So you have to factor that in when considering his likelihood for survival. Also, we know, a great way to pull at the heartstrings of your players is to take away the animal companion. I mean, not only can it be a great motivating factor for the main character, but it does help to get the audience invested. Now, with that said, and considering his fierceness in battle, I do think, it is at the end of the day very possible he does survive, but age is a factor, and we have to consider that when thinking of Torgle. Ultimately, if I were to place my bets, I would say that Torgle is going to survive, but he's probably the character I am the most worried about, not just because age is a factor, but because taking away the animal companion is a trope we have seen in fiction used quite often. So again, I'm going to place my bets that he's going to survive, but man, I'm going to be looking over my shoulder constantly, hoping that Torgle makes it to the end. Last but not least, we have Sid. Sidolphus, I suppose I should say. Sid's another one where I could go either way. He's obviously your best bro on the campaign. If you were going to try and instill some loss in Clive, I think if you're not going to take away Torgle, Sid is probably your next best bet. And again, one thing that worries me is if we do take a look at his profile here, it says, known to his friends as Sid, the soldier turned outlaw strives to build a place where persecuted bearers and exploited dominants can die on their own terms. If that is his vision, then honestly, if he gets to quote-unquote die on his own terms, in a way, that's kind of a happy ending for him, because that's what he's setting out to do. So again, I'm on the fence with Sid, but I'm definitely more worried about him than I am Torgle. But that's going to about wrap it up for the main cast. Let me know what you guys think about my predictions. Let me know what your personal predictions are. But with all that said, be sure to subscribe to the Landy Lodge for more RPG and gaming content. Thank you for watching this video. You, ladies and gentlemen, be good out there. Be good to yourselves and each other. And I will see all of you beautiful sickos and normies next time.